Am I really going to talk politics on the channel? Yes, I am. If you've been around for a while, I mean, you know that I don't shy away from the tough, nuanced conversations that we get to have as caregivers in this work. And so this is no different. When you're in the States with an election year like we're having right now, this is a big deal. And I wanted to talk about, my considerations, my experience, hopefully to get a conversation started. I will say I was an early voter, so I voted, I want to say like 2 weeks ago. Wanted to get it out of the way. I know that it helps the people who are volunteering for the organization so that they can focus their efforts. So that really mattered to me this year, is to, say, yes, I am a decided voter, get it out of the way. With it being a presidential election, there is a lot of noise. There's a lot of conversation. And I want to bring it back to what are the issues that matter to you. And it's going to be different person to person. So this is going to be a very nuanced conversation. But also I want to talk about what is the impact on the kids in care and the families who are involved in the child welfare system based on how you're voting. You're not only shaping the policies that could impact these families and children, but you're also setting an example. And so if you're watching this and you haven't yet voted, I hope this gives you an opportunity to reflect on things that are important to you. If you already have, still you might find value in this, to have conversations with the young people or really anybody in your life. And I want to start off by talking about being that example as a foster caregiver to the children who are in your care, in your home. When you vote, you are demonstrating your civic responsibility. And what I've learned over the last few years in having conversations with people, there are a lot of people out there who don't vote, who don't exercise this right. And at first I'm like, gosh, why? But at the same time, I can understand, I can empathize with the people who feel as though their vote doesn't matter. Those who have been involved in systems that have not been built to support them. So when you have systems in place that are inherently flawed, racist, prejudice, why bother? And I think sometimes with politics and policies, there's this disillusioned feeling with, these politicians are promising all these things, but then when they get into office, they really don't deliver on it. So again, what's the point? And I can't address all of those issues because, it's valid concerns and valid feelings, but the more that we talk about it and have conversations with people who feel this way, I'm hoping that will open up and make voting more accessible, more comfortable, so that people are willing to give it a chance. And when you have these conversations with young people, and I primarily foster teens and those older kids, having these conversations, you're able to demystify this whole process because it can be very intimidating. You have to register, you have to know where to go, what do you bring? You see young kids already, like teenagers, who are nervous to make a phone call to order pizza, and life is changing, times are changing, and you can order food without having a conversation. And so there are some insecurities and social anxieties that are present, and I'm not making them right or wrong. I think we need to meet young people where they're at and meet people where they're at. But when you have these conversations, it starts to kind of pull the veil away from voting, and it shows how easy it can be. So when possible, I like to bring my kids or foster youth who are in my care, I like to bring them along with me, show them what the lines look like, what to expect when you walk up and you see people with, what are they called? The little brochures for each party, how to interact and speak with them respectfully. And then, showing your driver's license, seeing the ballot, how you can have privacy, where to go, all those steps. If they walk through it with you, then they're more likely to feel comfortable when they're 18 and when they're going to vote for the first time. And for those of you who have, kids who are aging out of the system, get them registered to vote. If you're still in contact with kids who've been in your care, check in with them and make sure, hey, have you registered to vote? Do you know where to go? Do you have any questions? Can I point you to any resources? This is coming from a place of genuine care and service. And I would say, ask questions. I wouldn't kind of dictate or tell, hey, these are the things you need to care about. You should be voting this way. We want to steer clear of that. And again, in the States right now, we have a huge presidential election, which could potentially overshadow some other issues. I think there's a lot of people who will vote on one particular key issue. And sometimes, again, I'm not going to make it right or wrong because there are a lot of people out there who are doing it. However, there are a lot of policies that matter to our everyday life, and maybe not necessarily at the presidential level. So when we talk about child welfare, the Department of Job and Family Services, yeah, those really are at the state level. So I would encourage you to pay extra close attention to the politicians, to the policies that you're going to be voting on and for. Yeah, those state and local elections are really where the policies, like you're gonna start to feel it, where the funding is going, what policies are going to be put into place. Some candidates are focused on social services and family, like not just children, but family. I live in Ohio and we have Governor Mike DeWine, and I've been in conversations where he is talked about that he does so much for child welfare and families and children. And to be honest, I don't agree. I think that he talks a lot about it. I think that it comes from more of a savior complex, and he's focused more on children and adoption than really improving the foster care system as a whole and giving supports to family. But he's the governor we have right now, and so, we got to work with it. But yeah, pay attention to those state and local races and check in on the policies. I really do hope we are going to move towards a more bipartisan democracy. That is what I am standing for. That is how I vote, is for people in positions to work together. I don't think we're getting anywhere being so polarized. And I think that, for me, I don't want to speak specifically on the issues for me, but I will just say in general, I care about people over policy and, fiscal type of issues. Like, it is people first for me. And so until, we get past that in America, I am going to vote accordingly. And I do want this video to support the community, so please drop resources that you have found helpful. Please be respectful. Let's, remain neutral. I don't want this to be some kind of fighting ground. There's enough of that. But resources on how to have conversations with young people about just the process in general, maybe not specific parties. And also where, depending on where you're located, what are the best websites to get that local and state information? Because sometimes it's easy to say, okay, the internet's out there, go search for it. But what is valid? What is fact over fiction? It can be difficult to discern, and there are people who may not come from the same, socioeconomic, educational background. And so these are barriers. These are barriers to having educated voters. So yes, please drop resources that you find helpful below. I will suggest that key kind of topics to look for are child welfare type of policies, social services, what is being proposed. Is there any support for kinship efforts or reunification, or is it more adoption focused? That can sometimes be an undertone in some of these policies where it sounds good, it's a well-meaning, well-intentioned policy, but is it really supporting families? There's I hope I don't mess this up. There's this analogy or metaphor or story about how, the foster care system is primarily about, in front of this river, and you're trying to pull people out of the river and get them out. And a lot of our policies tend to revolve around those types of services. Like, people are in this situation, how do we get them out? But what about the policies that are a little bit further upstream or downstream? Upstream. And why are people falling into the river to begin with? What are the policies that are going to support that? So how do we wrap around families? How do we have a system that is supportive so that we don't have people falling in the river, so we don't have families breaking apart because of mental health or addiction, poverty? Families should not be ripped apart because of poverty. That's tough to swallow. That really is. And with it being Adoption Month, there's probably going to be topics I want to bring people on. But really, what I want to say about adoption is that, I guess what I want to say is it's harder to spin that story about children being unwanted or unloved and they're meant to complete your family when there are parents, their parents are there and it was due to poverty that they couldn't have housing and they were homeless and so their kids were taken away, or a lot of domestic violence relationships. When the survivor leaves, they are now on a single income and they can't afford a place to live and support their children. And so a domestic abuse case turns into a poverty or a homeless case. And sometimes those, parent survivors of that abuse end up losing their kids. And gosh, that just, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that, and I don't know if there's a lot of people out there who would admit that they want to see that. I do just want to wrap up and say that conversations about politics can happen. They can happen in very respectful ways. It really, at its core, you have to be exercising empathy and understanding and listening from a place of humble curiosity and without judgment. And that goes for both sides, because I've seen on both sides of the political spectrum some tough things. And it really does break my heart, because I do see that if we come together and we have honest conversations and really try to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody else and not be looking at it through our own lens, we all come with bias. And so without that humility, being able to come to a conversation not assuming that you're right. And that's hard for a lot of people to do. I know I think I'm right. I think I'm super right. But there are times where I genuinely ask somebody on the other side, like, I am very sure of this for me, and yet you are on the other side very sure in opposition. Like, tell me your thought process. Like, where are you coming from? And I think if we had more conversations like that, we might be able to find where we're off. And not that we always have to agree, but maybe we could get to a place where there was a level of respect for each other. And I don't think we're that far off from that. I really don't, but that's me being hopeful. And with that, that is all I'm going to say on the issue. Please get out and vote. Have conversations with your young people in your life. Be the example. Be that example of openness, empathy, and humble curiosity. That's a big one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.